If you've come home to an empty chameleon cage and there's no sign of your little tree dragon inside, that gut punch panic that you feel is something that many of us have experienced. And in this video, I'm going to explain what to do calmly,
serenity now,
logically, effectively to increase the chances that you're going to find your chameleon. Whether you just discovered that they've gone off on an adventure.
Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Our fugitive has been on the run for 90 minutes.
Or you've been searching for a couple of days now. Now, to explain this,
let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
I am going to tell you a story of Sully's adventure.
I'm going on an adventure!
In other words, what to do when your chameleon skips town. And this is a real life story experienced by James Cross, who just seems to be an adventure magnet. Now, the star of the show is Sully. Sully is an adult, male, yellow-lipped Parsons chameleon. Sully lives in this very nice outdoor enclosure. You can see there's lots of place for Sully to hide, and Sully gets natural morning sunlight. Why in the world would you want to go anywhere when you have a nice place like that? And of course, James the keeper loves to go and check on Sully, and this is what you want to see when you're walking up to the enclosure. Now, this is not what you want to see when you walk up to the enclosure. A door swung open because it wasn't latched properly. Now, this isn't always a disaster for us chameleon keepers because we create these enclosures that are heavily planted, and so the chameleons feel like that is home.
That's your home! Are you too good for your home?
50% of the time, if something happens and the door isn't latched properly, you're going to find your chameleon still inside the cage, happy as can be.
60% of the time, it works every time.
But that other 50% of the time, yeah, your chameleon has gone on an adventure. So, what do you do? Well, the first step in figuring out what to do is actually understanding, what do chameleons do? By understanding what a chameleon is thinking, we can maybe figure out where they went. And we start with the first thing that's on every chameleon's mind is feeling a sense of security. That's why we have these heavily planted enclosures, is because chameleons want to feel secure. They want to be behind plants, they want to be up high. And when your chameleon walks out of that cage, that's the first thing that's on your chameleon's mind. Okay, maybe they were curious about something they saw.
Squirrel!
They wanted to check it out, but very soon they're going to be looking for a place that they can feel safe and hidden. Remember, a chameleon doesn't have a whole lot of natural defenses. Their biggest defense is not being seen. And so walking across the lawn is not a comfortable thing for them. Dogs, cats, birds of prey. They have natural predators in their home turf that would love to pick off a chameleon in the middle of the yard. They're going to be looking for a place to hide. And this is why, our second point, they don't go far. You see, let's get into the chameleon's mind here. They're not escaping. If they wanted to escape, then they'd want to put as much distance between them and the cage as possible. But they're not escaping. That's not on their mind. When they leave their cage, they're just saying, okay, I'm going off to check out this area, but I want to go to the next place that is safe and secure. To your chameleon's mind, the best place to go is the nearest place that offers that security. And I'm making a big deal out of this, so you know that the most likely place for your chameleon to be found is very close to the place that they've, quote, escaped from. And many people, I've done it too. When our chameleon is lost, we want to make signs and put them up all over the neighborhood.
They just can't get my nose right.
Well, unless your house is just a barren wasteland, your chameleon probably hasn't gone more than just one house to your left, right, or back. The good news is there's a high probability that your chameleon is very close right now. You just can't see him.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
They're kind of good at that because, number 3, they stay hidden. Yeah. So many times we find our chameleon right next to their cage or right next to our house, just yards away, and we didn't see them because they're darn good at staying hidden. You know that very cute swiveling to put their branch between you and them? Well, in the cage, that's cute. But the reason why they're doing it is because in the wild, it works incredibly well. The most likely scenario is that your chameleon is sitting there watching you look for your chameleon, and your chameleon's wondering why you're not bringing a cricket. But that's the nature of a chameleon. They like to stay hidden. Now we've got the lay of the land. At least we know that they're not really trying to escape. They just like to stay hidden because that's their instinct. And they're probably near us somewhere. Now, in the past, I would say I have most often found them in my yard or else at a neighbor's house. I've never had a chameleon go cross country to get away.
I'm walking into the desert alone.
But they're really good at staying hidden, so it's going to be a challenge. And how are we going to step up and meet this challenge? Well, I've got 4 chameleon search hints. The first is to look in trees and bushes.
Gotcha.
And you're saying, Bill, isn't that obvious? Yes, it is. But I want to add to this. I know we look for the highest point. When I've had big trees in my backyards and lost a chameleon, I always look to the top of that tree. You know where I find them? Usually I find them at head level or below in bushes. So yes, chameleons will go high. But the reason why this is number 1 on the list is because they will also go in bushes. So definitely look at bushes.
It is a good strawberry. I like the laurels particularly.
The craziest thing was I lost an adult Miller's chameleon. And I kept looking at the top of the tree because that's where I assumed a Miller's chameleon would go. Well, when I found her, it wasn't at the top of the tree. It was in a bush. And I did a fecal analysis, check for parasites and such. And what did I find? Parts of earwigs. Now, those of you who know earwigs live near the ground. And so she was literally in a bunch of bushes picking off earwigs from the ground. And I guess living her best life. It was a complete month of living out in the wild. And no, she was not emaciated. She was quite healthy, feasting on earwigs. Look at trees, but also look at bushes. Second, use a flashlight at night. Yes, chameleons, they have not evolved the defenses against something with a flashlight. And their body reflects light, and so it's almost as if they glow. And that's how we find chameleons at night in Madagascar. We get a flashlight and we see where they start to glow. Now, there's a trick to this because their skin is photosensitive. And so if you keep the light on them, their skin literally changes color and stops reflecting the light. And so you can see the chameleon, and if you keep your light on it, the chameleon will literally disappear. What you do is you see the chameleon and you keep going with your light, and then you bring your light back to see the chameleon again. They're not going anywhere. And so that's the way you keep the chameleon easy to find. Now, this may seem obvious because whenever you say you've lost your chameleon, you go online, the first thing everybody says is go outside with a flashlight. And I do know it works because I found chameleons in Madagascar that way. But I gotta say, personal experience, I've never found a lost chameleon at night with a flashlight. I have always found them during the day. The lesson of this is, if you're not finding them at night, don't feel discouraged and keep up looking for them during the day. You could find them the next day, you could find them in weeks, a month later, even months later. I lost a panther chameleon one time in fall, and he went through an entire winter, which got down to freezing. I found him in spring, right there, sunning himself at eye level on my patio. He was a little skinny because panther chameleons aren't meant to go through freezing weather, but he was healthy enough to bounce back and live many years after that. Next, look near and far. Emphasis on near. Once again, they are not going to go far.
Almost there. What? No! Oh, no!
You just take a look at the topography around you and say, do you have any place that a chameleon could feel safe? Remember, they don't care how far from the cage they go.
I don't care!
They're not trying to get as far away as possible. And if you have a bush right next to your cage, they may very well just hang out in that bush. They have no concept of escaping. They're just trying to find a place that they feel more secure. My fourth suggestion is, if you have other chameleons, put one in the cage and open the door and watch where they go. That's the best way to figure out what goes on through a chameleon's mind. And your other chameleon will know which direction looks attractive. May as well put your chameleons to work. Now, I am sure you understand the risks in doing this, and you will be careful that you don't lose another chameleon. You have to stay far enough back so you don't mess up the experiment, but not so far back that you won't be able to discourage a falcon or a hawk from grabbing your chameleon or making sure dogs, cats, whatever, interfere with the experiment. Okay, now let's get back to our story about Sully the chameleon. Well, James had been looking for 2 whole days. This is his prize Parsons chameleon. You know he was putting in the hours. Well, he was on his way to take another one of his Parsons chameleons to the vet when he got a call from his wife. It turns out that Sully had been spotted. Well, James whipped that car around and got back home, and sure enough, there was Sully sitting about 30 feet high in a 60-foot tree. Obviously, James got a ladder, went to the tree, and went to retrieve his Parsons chameleon. Now, 2 things about going and trying to retrieve your chameleon if they're high up in a tree. First of all, they will swivel. That's what chameleons do. And so it can be very difficult to find your chameleon once you're in the tree. And James ran into this problem because Sully swiveled behind a branch and James couldn't find him. Finally, he was able to identify a little curve of Sully's tail and was able to find where Sully was hiding. Now, point 2, think about how you're going to be holding this chameleon while you're getting down out of the tree. In Madagascar, the guides all bring long sticks, and you get the chameleon to crawl up on the stick, and then you can climb down holding the stick. James forgot about that little point and ended up having to put Sully on his shoulder and kind of hold Sully in place with his head while he climbed down.
You know, it's a good thing you're not a big fat guy, or this would be really difficult.
James wanted me to remind you that that wasn't necessarily the most effective and efficient way of doing that. This is a story with a happy ending, and Sully is back into his enclosure, safe, sound, and eating grasshoppers. Now, James was good enough to take a video for me showing how far Sully had gone. This video shows where Sully's enclosure is and the path that Sully took to find the tree that Sully was in. Now, you can see in the background here, there is a whole valley of trees available. And so if Sully really was trying to make an escape, he could have been long gone in that forest. But he was in the first tree because that's what was secure. Now, when you look at this video, it seems obvious that that would be where Sully was. The first tree, how obvious can you be? But it's only obvious when you know the ending of the story. When you are trying to find your chameleon, remember, they are very good at hiding. You can be looking at the tree that they are in from all different angles and still not see your chameleon. And then your spouse is sitting in the kitchen and looking out and saying, oh, there it is, where you've been looking for the last 2 days. That is the nature of finding chameleons. Now, the next search hint is to use binoculars. Because as you are searching for your chameleon is actively hiding from you, and this is what they do best. And so this is why chameleons are often found by people not looking for them. If you want to look for your chameleon without giving them reason to hide from you, get a pair of binoculars and sit on your porch and just scan the trees. This is a good time to put on the Chameleon Academy podcast and listen to Chameleon podcasts while you relax and just watch the trees. But you got to do it with the binoculars and see if you see something. So many chameleons are spotted by people not looking for the chameleon.
How could you not find him?
Because he's hard to find. If he was easy to find, the books would be called There's Waldo.
Which means the chameleon doesn't feel threatened and is walking around on the outside of the branches. So this is something that you can take advantage of. All right, so let's huddle up and summarize everything. If your chameleon gets out, definitely start looking and use all of these hints. Yes, many people do find their chameleons, but many people don't. And so if your chameleon has been lost, I'm sorry. I wish you the best of luck, but don't give up because there's a high probability that you will be able to find them. So don't give up hope.
Never give up, never surrender.
Now, if you've enjoyed this presentation, know that this actually was given live on the Chameleon Academy live channel. Every Saturday at 12 noon Pacific, I do an hour live session with the Chameleon Academy community. It's on a separate channel called Chameleon Academy Live. The link, of course, is down in the description. And we do a different topic every week, but it's not just learning. In fact, learning's a small part of it. Most of it is the community. We get together, we share what's going on, and we celebrate loving chameleons together. So join us whatever Saturday you're free, and you don't even have to watch it. You can just listen. Many people actually listen to the show while they're working. Shh. But you're invited. And with that, I want to send you off to be awesome. My name is Bill Strand, and I'll see you later.